Hey Paul, this is the wiring. This is the driver's side wheel. There's the transmission oil pan. This is the wiring loom right here for the park range sensor, or the transmission range sensor. There's the harness plug here. The only problem is hidden behind this transmission mount, so you have to support the transmission. Remove the two bolts here, this one, then the bottom piece, or you can take the bottom nut off here. That plate comes off. Take those two bolts off. There's a bolt on the top, and then there's, I think, 3 bolts that mount the bracket to the transmission. I'll send you service info anyways, and then once this is off, like I said, you have easy access to the range switch. 1997 Jetta. Intermittent stalling or no start when driving. Obviously the no start when you want to start it, the stalling when driving. Key on. Right now the check engine light is on. I had it running for a bit, trying to get it to act up, getting a crank signal. There you go, right there. No check engine light. If I go under the fuse box and wiggle the 109 power supply relay, there it is. So this one needs a relay. Have a good weekend, guys. Nice clean dipstick. I'm not going all the way down. You can see the level is already right there. Can you point out where it is? Can you see it? Right there, yeah. I'm going to go all the way down now. That's got to be at least twice the amount of oil.
No, I think it's more.
Nice. Almost 4 liters came out, or it was overfilled. Almost 4 liters overfilled. Forgot to mention that the oil does not smell of fuel, so it's not a matter of gasoline getting into the oil. Engine runs fine. No issues starting, no stalling. I was surprised there was no smoking when driving with almost 8 liters of oil. Or 7 at least. But anyways, don't overfill. Cup holders right next to an electronic parking brake switch. Not really the greatest idea. You can see there's signs of fluid. There's a little bit of a damp spot here, and there's grime. There's grime and dirt in here. So it's very common that over time fluid penetrates into the switch, or dirt gets into the switch and then causes problems. I found the EVAP leak. This is the leak detection pump. That's the charcoal canister. The pump is leaking right around this seam here. Let me just turn on the smoke machine and you'll see. Sometimes too much smoke is no good, but it's coming out from the seam right along there, right around it. So I keep getting asked about ignition coils or no start situations where the guys say that there's no pulsing light at the ignition coil connector. Well, the problem is if you use a regular incandescent light, that's not going to light up. You need an LED test light. So I'm just going to show you how a regular light will not flicker. Okay? Good. And then an LED test light, it needs to be connected to positive. So this guy is hot right now, and you'll see. Go ahead. Good. So you can see the pulsing there. So basically what happens is that you've got power coming into the coil, and there's a ground side here for the power output stage. And then whenever the computer gets a signal from the from the engine speed sensor down there, what it does is it grounds the center terminal, and that grounds the transistor, which collapses the coil. And so in order to check it, like I said, you need a LED light. A incandescent bulb will draw way too much, and then it won't, and because it happens so quickly, this just won't light up enough or at all. So hopefully that helps somebody. I may not have been specific enough with that in the past. Customer brings 6-pack. One is remaining. 3 people working. 2 per person. I guess that's one of mine. Not sure where the other one is. Oh, I guess it's gone. I waited too long. You know, that's a thing, I shouldn't have to put my name on it. Anyways, I guess they were good and I missed out on it. Customers complaining about a creaking, clunking, knocking sound from the front, and they drove it here. Yeah, that CV joint's about to pop right out. Got the car up on the hoist, and you can see the CV boot is intact. This is one of those plastic rubber ones, which are actually better than the rubber ones. But if you pay attention to the boot here where the clamp is, it's not clamped correctly. It's actually loose. I don't know if you can see that. I'm able to move it, and that allows water to get in, and then this thing gets washed out, and that's what's making the noise. The bearing is shot because the clamps weren't tightened correctly or fully. Okay, so here's the drive shaft, or the CV axle, or whatever you want to call it, half shaft. And like I said, water gets in. Here you can see the water. And that's the bearing. This thing is so seized up. I can't. This should pivot left, right, up, down, and it doesn't really want to. It's just lock-jawed. But if you look at the center section here, oh, it's got all this free plate down in there, and that's where it's splined to the drive shaft. So putting a new bearing on this is not gonna, I don't think that's gonna hold. So I'm not gonna take this off until the customer sees this. Thanks to one of my viewers, I was made aware of that some of these 2.5 liter engines, especially the ones that have the power steering hydraulic pump above the alternator, on those models the alternator actually spins backwards, counterclockwise, which means that the alternator clutch itself has to work the other way. In my prior videos, when you hear me talking about the one-way clutch, the fans should spin. You should be able to spin the fans forward with the belt on, but not in the other direction. That does not apply on this engine because the pulley spins backwards. So you have to, the fins on this one move counterclockwise, but lock in the clockwise direction, so opposite. And I think in my prior videos I always mentioned as long as the clutch locks in one direction and releases in the other, that's good enough. So it really doesn't matter which case you have in terms of the alternator spinning counterclockwise or clockwise. Checking the clutch, you just feel for the fins, and then I'm pulling up on the fins. I can't move them. Now I'm pushing on the fin, and it's moving. So if you can do that on your alternator, be it a right hand or a left hand pulley, doesn't really matter, as long as, like I said, you can move the fins in one direction, not the other, that's fine. Let me get a long screwdriver, I'll show you. You can see the fin right there. Okay, so there you can see the fin, the cooling fin, and I'm just going to push down on it, and you can see it moving in a counterclockwise direction. Let me see if I can get another one. Okay. Now if the alternator were spinning clockwise, you would not be able to push the fins counterclockwise, but you should be able to push them clockwise. I know it's confusing, but it makes sense once you see it and try it yourself. It's hard to see, but there's a definite high spot and a low spot. They never mention anything, but of course as soon as they leave, never was like that before. You can see it shifting sideways. One more time. And it's definitely not the rim. It's definitely the tire. Right there. Oh, you can see the reinforcing belts. Time to put the spare on. When it's no longer freezing outside, turn your mirror heater off. Otherwise your mirrors will be getting hot. And then what is that, 40 degrees? And what happens is that the mirror comes loose off of the backing plate over time because of all the heat. So you can see it's on, it's heating. We've got sunny weather. There's no need for heater. So just move the knob over one position. 2.5 liter Jetta doing a thermostat, the whole assembly. Somebody else was asking about a secondary air pump. Secondary air pump is located right here. And as you can see, it's a different style than the old styles. There's no rivets holding this thing together. So if your air pump is noisy, it's either bearing noise or it's these tubes that run up. One of them goes up to the combi valve, runs along the side of the head, then goes to the pump, and the other one is the fresh air feed. That's this one here that hooks up to the intake snorkel, the intake hose. So there you go, there's the pump, and as I mentioned, it's accessible from underneath the vehicle unless you want to remove the intake manifold to gain access to it from the top. And it's mounted to this bracket here, which is mounted to the intake manifold. So remove what you have to remove in order to get to what you want to remove. Installation is a reverse of removal. Doing some brakes on an Audi 318. Have a good weekend, guys. 2002 Jetta, fuse 14 blows intermittently, interior lights and central locking, 10 amp fuse. Common issue with the interior lights is that this switch here, it's a sliding switch, so you can select the dome lights coming on with the door open all the time or in the off position. So that switch breaks, and then you've got some loose components that wiggle around while you're driving, and so what happens is that some of these make contact with stuff that it's not supposed to. There's sorry about the lighting. There's a reading lamp here, and then there's obviously a power and ground here. Sorry, just a power circuit. This is the slider that bridges across the two here, and so what I believe is what's happening is that this guy here gets contact with one of the light bulb terminals, and that blows the fuse. So if your switch is broken, this switch is missing, best thing to do is to remove these components, then you won't get that fuse blowing.